All right, welcome back to the Bolus Maximus podcast. My name is Matthew Taro. I'm here with my co-founder and good friend Brandon A. Denson, and a very special guest. Hey, Brandon, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Oh, a pleasure as always. And today we have Hiten Chalva, and so we're very excited to speak with him about CEQUR. But Hiten, thank you for joining us, the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development. Please introduce yourself and say hello.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, no matter where you're listening. But thank you, Matt and Brandon, for having me on the show. I'm very excited to talk to you all and to the listeners. So a little bit about me. So I am the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development, as you said, at CEQUR, but also a proud father of two little girls, 4 and 7, and I'm trying to be a good husband to my wonderful wife of 11 years. Next, we'll complete our 11th anniversary next Sunday. So very proud of that. But, one of the things that I like to introduce myself with is been in healthcare for 15 plus years, 13 and a half of that have been within the diabetes space. Started my diabetes journey with Medtronic, and then for the last year, I've been here with CEQUR and CEQUR Simplicity. But my connection to diabetes is very personal. Being Indian, we have a genetic disposition to diabetes as well. And as many of you guys, who are listening know that, you can't control how diabetes gets you, whether it's type 1 or type 2. And within my family, there's a lot of folks. Both my parents have diabetes. My aunt had diabetes, who she struggled to fight with, and then eventually lost her life too. So it's become a very personal, journey for me. And it's something that I strive to fight every day and see how we can kind of leave a legacy over the years. So that's where I'm at. I started my background with medical devices with Medtronic in the cardiovascular space. Did that. Cardiovascular diabetes have a very good connection, they'd say, but they're related. So spent since 2008 to 2020 at Medtronic Diabetes, doing insulin pumps, CGM, you name it. And then when the opportunity presented itself to perhaps, the way I kind of look at it is leave a legacy, I decided to join CEQUR and kind of take a little bit of a leadership role in bringing something new to the market.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
No, that's a great intro, and the fact that you've been in the medical field for 15 plus years, that's awesome. I have a question. Like, what made you pursue going into the diabetes field?
Or like transition, right? You said you started in cardiovascular?
Yeah.
So, and Medtronic, for those listening, if you're unaware, Medtronic Diabetes, one of the major diabetes manufacturers of insulin pumps, also makes way more other things. They make more other things than they do diabetes things.
That's right. Yeah. The story is very interesting. I'll actually even go back a little bit further, what made me choose healthcare in the first place, because my background in education is accounting and finance. How exciting, right? But reality is, my undergrad was in accounting and finance. I grew up in India, in New Delhi, and I went to undergrad there. In one of the top schools, was lucky enough to kind of get in. And so typically, you graduate out of undergrad, and I started my work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which I realized after about a year, I just didn't enjoy it. My best friend's an accountant, all the power to him, but I just couldn't do it for myself. And so I decided to kind of do something different. I had a chance and an opportunity to move to Hong Kong at the time, and worked on a couple of projects along with the major Asian development banks and about public healthcare infrastructure, and got a chance to see certain things that were different and how much we have an opportunity within healthcare to improve the lives of people, that, everyone around us. And Asia, as you guys know already, has a lot of challenges in trying to figure things out. So when I decided to come to the United States for my master's, I decided to focus on healthcare. So went to upstate New York, focused on my MBA, but also focusing on healthcare. And that's how I started with Medtronic. And Medtronic's a great company, as you said, Matt. Great opportunity to learn from the best. Started in cardiovascular, I was part of a leadership program, so started in our cardiovascular business. And then an opportunity came up after about a year and a half to look at another business. And as I mentioned, I've always had a very strong kind of interest in diabetes because of my personal reasons. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to be able to kind of understand from the other side, meaning from a manufacturer perspective, what can one do in order to make things better? How can you actually improve technology? Was the perfect opportunity to kind of do it at Medtronic. And that's what made me move over to diabetes.
Man, that's a pretty intensive rap sheet right there. No, that's awesome because you see a lot of people uh actually make transitions, right? And you're making them, the transitions that you're making are because you didn't like what you were doing and you felt that you could probably make a bigger impact doing something else. So, when you hear stuff like that, a lot of people, kudos to you, because a lot of people won't make that transition based off like, oh, I went to school for this and I need to do this. It's like, nah, this isn't what I want to do. I can make a bigger impact and help people live their lives in a more sustainable way. And that's awesome.
I'm gonna take I'm gonna take what Brandon said and refine it even a little bit more, because that personal element, right? Because of that cardiovascular disease, right? Like heart disease is the number one leading cause of death, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
in reality, um, there are a lot of individuals who are working towards, um, you know, but it's more education for cardiovascular and necessarily outside of some of the medical needs from surgeons and so on. But in a way, it's like diabetes is right behind it, and that mental like stress. You said your parents had diabetes. Were you were like when you were growing up, like was there a worry about your parents? I mean, obviously, unfortunately, and um, you know, your aunt, but was there a worry for your parents when you were growing up? What was that like?
So you know what? I think that's the reality of a couple of things that when I was growing up. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of a worry, but with type 2 diabetes, Matt, what I saw, and I still see it, people don't take it as seriously because it's not as imminent, right? So I'm not saying that they don't take it seriously, but when I was growing up, there was lack of knowledge and truly understanding of what is going on until something that serious happens, right? And that's when it kind of hits home. And we have an opportunity to kind of improve certain things with education. But the reality is, you know, life happens, right? And there's so much going on, and diabetes is one of those things, right? And for someone with type 2 diabetes, I'm not saying in a type 1 and type 2, they're both, again, different stages in life. But when we were growing up, it wasn't as seriously thought of until a major event happened. And when that happens, it's no different, right? If you look at a heart attack, right? People will tell you have high blood pressure. Okay, I'll take my statins. I'll do this. I'll go for my walk. The next evening, you're drinking again, eating again. And all of those are fine, but it gets out of control until that event happens. And I think our responsibility and what I realized is to make things simple enough so that it doesn't become a hurdle. And that's why when growing up, while it was important, it wasn't as front and center of a worry until that event really happened.
Yeah, and I think diabetes in general, because Brandon and I both live with type 1.
Yeah.
It just happens. You're Who would be a good candidate, right? So when you think about your parents, you think about your family and the history. You think about the rest of in the culture in Asia. Um, you know, who in the United States, it's very different. Who's a good candidate for wearing something like a CEQUR patch? Because a lot of people around the world take insulin very differently.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's one of the reasons why I chose to come to CEQUR and kind of help bring CEQUR simplicity to many millions of people with diabetes. But one of the things that we know, Matt and Brandon, is taking insulin every day. I kind of equate it to this actually. ask people, anyone, and myself included, do you take your vitamins? And I'm overly simplifying it, but how often do we miss taking your vitamins? And when you talk to a physician, say, oh, my patients are taking, in the end, it's getting into the life and the boots of someone living with diabetes. And I'm giving you a little bit of a preamble around this because to your question, who's a good candidate? I think this answers it. When I kind of look at it, too often, whether it be the United States or whether it be anywhere in the world, but too often a finger is pointed at someone living with diabetes that you're not as compliant and you can do better and you can do this. You're not living with diabetes. You don't know how hard it is. Listen, I miss taking my vitamins, right? And I'm not trying to equate it, but remembering things like that. And now think about poking yourself 4 or 5 times a day. And then you start getting into the mindset, well, there's a reason why people aren't compliant. And then you start adding things to that to say, okay, you're going to sit with your friends and you're going out. Listen, you guys are outgoing. You're out here talking about it. A lot of power to you guys because this is so important. But the reality is, and the reason why Bolus Maximus is here, why you guys are here, is trying to get around the point that it's okay to live with diabetes. It's not a social stigma. But it doesn't work like that, right? People will not want to take out for in front of others, or it's just not easy to kind of lift up your shirt, put the injections in, and all of that goes with it. And so when you ask me who's a good candidate is any patient or any person with diabetes who's taking mealtime insulin and wants a simpler life to do it. I kind of call it as, if you don't want to stick it and you want to click it, that's what CEQUR simplicity is. And it's sticks, it's not clicks.
I like that. I like that.
Well, that's a good point, actually. We'll introduce it when we do the podcast, but tell us like the elevator pitch for what CEQUR is and what's coming to market.
Yeah. So CEQUR started a while ago, but CEQUR Simplicity is our flagship product. It's a very simple, on-body insulin patch for mealtime insulin delivery. And I'll show, for the videos here in a couple of minutes what the device really looks like. But essentially, it comes from the fact that when you look at the, when you speak to patients and when you speak to physicians and you look at the data, what it says is that almost 70% of the time, people are missing their injections. We know people miss their injections for some of the reasons we talked about. About 40 to 50% of the time, and then stats are for everyone to see, but people miss it on purpose as well. They know they're missing it, but it happens. It's also delayed. And we know insulin works, but you have to make sure that it's there. So that's when you start thinking about CEQUR and CEQUR Simplicity. The idea to kind of come into this world now is, in a world which is full of complexities, we have all of these devices that are connected and they're talking to each other. And what's the root cause? We haven't made it simple for people, and we just haven't. And when you think about creating a revolution, that's what I think we're going to try and do here. For people with diabetes, especially with type 2, think about the challenges that I've had, right? You've had insulin syringes and pens 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And what do we try and do? We create all of these wonderful insulin pumps, and they are wonderful, trust me, all of them. But do they really work for someone with type 2 diabetes? 95% of the people who are taking mealtime insulin today with type 2 diabetes in the United States still take injections and pens.
All right, I'm gonna hit you real hard right here. So, real quick, if Omnipod and Vigo had a baby, it would look like CEQUR.
Okay? Don't do that to him. Don't do that.
So look at it like this. A lot of type 2 diabetics. I worked I worked at Tandem Diabetes for a year and a half. So I had conversations, and I say this often, but self-admittedly, I did not look at type 2 diabetics in a very respectful light for a long time. And it was because of the stigma around, you're not taking care of yourself, you're overweight, you're unhealthy, and XYZ, whatever, not really knowing that there were more than just type 1 and type 2. And then once I started working there, I realized how much insulin they took. So what is CEQUR's answer to somebody, a company like Tandem, for reference, made a specific insulin pump that held 400 units.
Yeah.
480 units.
Yeah.
It was huge. That's specifically targeted to people with type 2 diabetes. And the Omnipod only holds
200.
200.
Yes.
You see what I'm getting at, right?
No, totally getting it. So listen. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you ripping that thing out the package to show us?
Yeah.
All right, okay.
And I'm gonna flip it out and show you this in a second. And actually, I might need to.
Yeah, you might have to clear the background just so it doesn't
blur my background here. But no, listen. While I do that, let me first of all say that all of the technologies that have come into the insulin pump world are fantastic. Whether it be the Medtronic, 670G, that was the first, automated insulin pump, or technologies before that, which I kind of worked on, the first integrated insulin pump, the first insulin pump. And then you look at what the T-Slim has done and the Omnipod. I will say at the very outset, it is phenomenal technology, okay? But I also say one more thing, which is very, very important to remember, is that, and you guys know this, there is no one-size-fits-all solution in diabetes. There just isn't. And to expect that is that you do not understand what a patient goes through. But I actually think, let's just go back into regular consumers, right? Would we all start wearing same jackets? And I mean, then that's a uniform. And then you'll see no revolution coming around. There's no creativity around it. And so I sometimes try and equate things to consumers and diabetes also, because with diabetes, you have to make a choice every day. It's not like an implant that's gone inside my body and I just have to live with it. I have to live with it every day, make decisions with it. So that's why the second point of why choice is important. I do want to point that I think it's not a baby between a Vigo and an Omnipod. But if you were to say it, it's a pretty darn good looking baby, okay?
Yeah. Respectfully, and I've been around the Vigo from hearing type 2 patients talk about it, and I used to wear the Omnipod. So when I see CEQUR as a consumer, I go, that looks a lot like two of those products. But sorry,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So let me talk a little bit about how your point about the amount of insulin. So CEQUR Simplicity, and I'm holding it in between my fingers for those of you who are actually going to see it on the video, but for those on the podcast, they can go to our website, myseqursimplicity.com, to see what the device really looks like. And it is thin. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, how you can get 200 units of insulin, I still figure out is a marvel of engineering. But the reality is this is a bolus-only patch map, right? So what you're doing is you're taking your basal insulin, your long-acting insulin, Levemir, Lantus, whatever you want to look at, every day anyway. So now if you were to lose the 50-50 math, right, or 60-40 math, this is 3 days of insulin for your meal times and corrections, which equates to about 400 units on over 3 days. It's pretty good. You cover,
How much, you said it was, how much is in?
So it holds 200 units of insulin.
And is it U100 only?
It's U100, Novolog, Humalog, so U100. Now, a majority of the people with type 2 diabetes, we see that it actually works for. Now, there are some people who are using a lot of insulin. And I've seen this over my years at Medtronic. I've done a lot of research around that. You have as well, I'm sure. And in that 5 to 10% of the cases, you would change this out every second day, not every 3 days. But it does actually, and the fact that it is extremely simple to use really does help. So listen, technologies are great. And I think if we can give patients options to choose from, then that's great. What I believe Omnipod does and what Medtronic does, what Tandem does is great with technology. I think this goes on to the other side and making things really simple. And what I believe is the best device, honestly, is the one that patients really use. You can't create technology and hope that everyone uses it. Reality is people don't. When you talked about, underserved communities, you talk about, I think it's more than that. It is more the fact that, there's a lot of opportunity to make things simple for people, and then trust them that, listen, if you made it simple, they would take their insulin. You don't need 20,000 reminders.
No, you're spot on.
Yeah, you killed that. And like I'm sold, like, because I think sometimes I think in the diabetes space it's always like either like a doctor trying to push the product on somebody, or some, maybe even somebody else from the community saying like, oh, well, this works for me. And I think like the best thing that works is the thing that the person actually wants to use. And I keep hearing simple, like it's simple. It is simple. It's
Yeah.
simple that you put that little secure simplicity patch on yourself, and then you can actually click to give you insulin. But
Yep.
then the other thing is, it takes me back to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. I'm not
Yeah.
calling anybody stupid, but from the Navy in the 1960s, that was a term that they came up with. And I think the simpler things are for people, the more inclined they are to want to use them, or, actually just feel like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Because the thing is, diabetes is so overwhelming in the sense of like, I have to do so much thinking just in my regular day life. But then you add diabetes on top of it, you add kids on top of it, you add school or work or whatever it is, and just so many stressors that come into play. Just keep it simple, stupid. And then you have something that you can just use and know that you're not going to have any issues, and it's not going to be super complicated.
We gotta clarify one thing
Oh,
before
yeah.
we move
Go
forward.
ahead.
Yeah, we are not trained medical professionals. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. So Brandon Denson and myself, Brandon A. Denson and Matthew Tarot here are not trained medical professionals. We speak from experience. We just have to make that clear. I think it's like a legal thing.
We're just subject matter experts. That's all.
But you nailed it, and I think your response is, I'm genuinely excited for people to use such a product like Secure Simplicity, and for a couple of reasons. I spoke to, maybe I would say the range is probably between 10 and sometimes 30 on a crazy day, diabetics every day for a year and a half. And that was my daily. And I got to learn the type 2 diabetes, like how they do things differently. And your point about mealtime versus bolus is spot on. And the number one thing, because for instance, Tandem no longer makes the T Flex, which held all that insulin, they're limited to 300 units. So we would have people call and they would say, I take 250 units a day. And we go, or 300. And be like, okay, well, I hope, as a diabetic myself, my name's Matt. Let me just explain. Like, if you've never used a pump before, that means that every 24 hours, you're going to change.
Yes.
I can't accurately tell you what that feels like and what it looks like and what it's going to do, like how it's going to be. And then people kind of go, okay, so I was like, all right, so just talk with your doctor, make sure that's something that you feel comfortable doing. But
That's right.
a big piece of that was also, as a non-medical professional, like, that's something you talk with about your doctors. Like, hey, this is how much mealtime insulin I take versus bolus. Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? And that split makes a big difference. So for Secure to be able to cover, I mean, even if I took it a little late or a little early, like Lantus, I took like 95, more like 99% of my shots. Like
Yes.
most of the time I took my long acting. It was my mealtime bolus that I would
Yes.
skip like rocks on a clear, still pond. Like, no way. Sorry. Sunday.
No, but Matt, you're absolutely right. But it's not just you. Again, none of us are medical professionals here. And our job really is to enable patients and empower patients and medical professionals to kind of see, where the reality is. A lot of them see it, but Lantus isn't the challenge. It really isn't. You're doing it at your home. It's a routine that can work out. It's just the stuff that you just have to do every day. And I kind of believe that when you make things simple, because again, I know, Brandon, you said, the KISS principle. That's actually 100% my philosophy. Because when you do that, right, it just ends up becoming second nature for someone to kind of think that this is a part of me, right? And I'm not trying to say that it'll work for every person in the world, but when you make things simple, you're empowering the individual to do a lot more. So mealtime insulin, Matt, to your point, it's not just you. That's where we see most people missing their shots. And it's Secure Simplicity is indicated for people with both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. It's for people with 21 years and above, and holds, the U100 novolog and humalog insulin. And when you do that, right, that's the idea, to empower people to take I kind of just say, hey, declare your freedom from injections if you really want to be it. But it's more like how you kind of empower yourself to do what you want. There's an option, right? You said there's a baby. I just feel that there's pens and syringes, and there's insulin pumps. And sometimes expecting people to jump from 0 to 100 is just not right. I mean, people aren't ready.
No.
Yeah.
No. And then I'll clarify again before Brandon asks his question here, but very respectfully, right? Like, I think a great technology and the simplicity of the Vigo, what it was looking like for years and years for people, and then also how amazing the Omnipod was. So, and I mean, it does seem like it's pretty cool. It's this thinnest thing I've ever seen, but here's the important question. I'll let Brandon get into it.
One, I want to give two shout outs. I want to give a shout out to Drake, because you just said 0 to 100, and that is a song by Drake, 0 to 100 real quick. And that's tough for people to go from 0 to 100 real quick in the diabetes space. And then in regards to the KISS principle, I got that from a buddy of mine. His name is Funky Sticks. So, but I had to do some research on it, because when he said it, I was like, did you come up with that? And I had to kind of look into it. So I mean, but it's a real thing, and I like the fact that we can bring real life scenarios that were, put together in the world today, and actually apply them, to our diabetes community and to our diabetes field, to the diabetes field. But I'm going to transition into, so how can the community get like a demo of the CEQUR Simplicity patch? I think that's very important. And then also I'm going to follow up with, in regards to how does the education come in for the doctors as well, far as this patch, because we know with so much technology already out there. I mean, we look at the Omnipod, we look at the T Slim, we look at the Medtronic, we have other pumps that are coming up the pipeline for diabetics. So like, where does this fit in far as on the educational side? And is it catered more toward type 1, type 2, or is it more just anybody that takes that, like you said, takes that mealtime insulin?
Yeah, great question. So let me start with one of the things and a hashtag that I'm going to coin here. Hashtag CEQUR Simplicity, hashtag we are not an insulin pump. Okay. And I say that in a minute, and I'll explain a little bit around that. And with all due respect, yeah, but all due respect to insulin pumps. But here's the thing. You asked a question about, I'll answer the second question first. How can, there be greater education amongst healthcare professionals? Absolutely important to kind of get the healthcare professionals educated, trained, aware of this, right? You kind of think of the funnel, you say there's first piece of awareness, then you kind of say, okay, there's got to be some engagement. So they start kind of getting to know and interacting with the device, and then empowering the patient to say, this is another important choice you want to get to. CEQUR Simplicity is about 8 to 9 months old into the commercial cycle right now. And so we are, between now and next year, going to be in a very limited launch in certain markets around the United States. If someone really wants to get to know it, can absolutely reach out to us via our social media channels. Go to our website, you'll find all of the information, and reach out to us, and we can actually arrange some of those things. But the first aspect of it is in the markets that we're kind of focusing on around the East Coast for now. We might kind of be adding a little bit around the West Coast where I'm based, sunny Southern California. Brandon, our place, I don't know, Matt, if you're in Southern California too, but there you go. So we guys gotta catch up at some point in person. But other than those places, next year is all about raising awareness of this technology, so that when we get to the year after, there's enough. Because what we want to make sure is we are scaling up our manufacturing enough to make sure we can serve all of the patients that we're looking to serve. I'll get to the first question now, which is on how can the community get access? Like I said, you can get online to our website, myseqursimplicity.com. Follow us on social media and request a demo or a prescription from your HCP if this is working out right. We have our 1-800 number. We kind of call it our white glove service. We'll take care of you. But it's very important to get the word out. The training, This thing takes 15 to 20 minutes to train, not like an insulin pump. And that's why, in our studies, we saw it less than 30 minutes. Real life, we're seeing it to that low. It's just easy. And you're not changing your basal bolus, right? So if you're saying, is it type 1 or type 2? The product is designed for simplicity, and no pun intended. A lot of people with type 2 gravitate to it, but we have about 20% of our patients, and we are over 500 patients using the product in the United States today. There are people with type 1. They just like it simple. It's like, your body, and when you know your body and you know your diabetes, you know what the right device for you is.
That's a great point about changing insulin. When somebody, to our conversation before about type 2s getting in off shots and onto a pump, I also, as a non-medical professional, would note that I had been I'd conversed with our internal teams, and it is also something that I experienced. You would take less insulin when you're on a pump than you would, right? Because your long-acting insulin is meant to be that 24-hour service for you,
Mhm.
and you need, right? So you're maybe taking, I don't know, 75 to 80%, or maybe even less of your insulin. So there is a big change when someone goes out, a kid, an adult, a senior, who says, screw the pens, and I don't want to stick it, I want to click it, right? And they get in and
Ooh, I love it.
That's a bar right there.
so when they get in, they want to do that, it's not about transitioning, which I think for a lot of people, the technology is scary. And for Bolus Maximus and for Brandon and myself, him and I are tech heads. I mean, my desk would make most people's heads spin, but like you're really, the simplicity behind what you're doing is exciting from an outsider's perspective, from someone who worked at an insulin pump manufacturer, who's been diabetic for 19 years. What up? That's exciting because there is no massive change. There is no learning curve. So in 15 to 20 minutes, when it's ready to launch, we'll have you come back for a podcast and teach somebody live on our podcast how to use it. And that's what we'll have to do, a follow-up. We're going to have to bring you back and get some team members there from your company as you guys start to grow. So what a fantastic company idea, initiative, hitting your dedication in to the market, right, to individuals like Brandon and myself. um we the reason we started this, the reason that we do this, um we didn't have male individuals, as shining examples, um and we want to make sure that everybody has an option, not just you have to use what I use so you feel good about it. Like, use whatever you need to. This is a great introduction for a lot of people who are nervous about insulin pumps. So they can find some more information listed below here. The podcast, we will also let Hitin drop his the social and the information for CEQUR one more time before we let you go. If there's any final words, anything we missed, please. But it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to speak with you.
No, awesome, man. Thank you. Thank you thank you so much for this. This is awesome.
Now, first of all, thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. You guys are awesome. First of all, let me say um, thank you for the initiative, right? That you guys are taking. It isn't easy, and I'll be a little long on this, but I will tell you that it is very important to do what you guys are doing, and we cannot thank you enough. I know the diabetes community, people with diabetes, the everyone's in this together, right? We are in this together, and the number one challenge right now is to be able to talk and do this together, and that's what you guys are doing. And for that, I applaud you guys. I thank you guys. Brandon and I had the first conversation a while back, and I'm truly impressed, because I think it's very important to get the voice out there. So thank you for that. And then second, thank you for the interaction today, to kind of allow me to come here and tell my story a little bit about CEQUR and CEQUR Simplicity. We're very excited. It's early days, but the feedback from our patients, from our providers, has been absolutely phenomenal. 95% of our user base basically completely or simply loves the product. So I can't wait for this to kind of get bigger, so that we empower patients. And so, for all of your listeners, who want to kind of learn more, they can go to our website, as we said, mysecuressimplicity.com, or follow us on our social media handles, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever your platform is. You can go at Secure Simplicity and you can find us.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, and I can't wait to come back if you guys will have me again.
Listen, I only have one more question for you. If you don't come back with wearing something tie-dye, like you're not gonna
we might have to get him something. You know,
I'm gonna. How about I get a Bolus Maximus tie-dye? There you go. But I actually have to head out this a little while. So we were doing on a Sunday. I was gonna go to one of our events at one of our holy in the Gurdwara.
Yeah.
So I had to wear this because I'm actually serving certain things there today. No, so otherwise I wouldn't be wearing this on a Sunday. Although I do have a couple of colors in here.
No, well, we appreciate you and respectfully, I think we owe a lot more conversation to this topic, especially some of the things that we've talked about. So we'd love to follow up. We'll have you back. Thanks so much, Hiten, and Chavla, and thank you very much for your time this morning on Sunday. Brandon and I signing off from Bolus Maximus. You can find more on bolusm.org. Join us every Sunday on our no, we don't have podcasts every Sunday, but we talk on Zoom every Sunday. It is a forum of safe space. Please join us. The information is below. Brandon?
Hey, you guys, as always, you know it. Keep it 100.
All right. Take care.